The school system is actually teaching people to be poor. The school system will never teach you about money. The school system was designed to teach you to be an employee or a doctor or a lawyer, a specialist, but never about money. My father was the head of education, PhD, all that stuff. I go home and ask him, I said, why don't we learn about money in school? And he looked at me and says, because the government doesn't let us teach that subject. The government tells us what we can teach and what we can't teach. And I thought that was strange. And I said, but aren't we going to school to learn about money? He says, no, your job is to get a job. Poverty is passed on. It's taught in your families. And middle class is taught in families. And so the people right now who are sitting at home, who are struggling financially or worried about money or unhappy, they may be making a lot of money, but unhappy with what they're doing, it was probably taught to you. You know, your superego was taught, get a job, work hard, or you'll never be rich, or the rich are evil, or whatever. If you're poor, you'll always be poor.
That's really
the money will disappear that fast. Just like most pro athletes, they make millions of dollars, and but 65% are bankrupt 5 years later. It's because they come from poor families. Now you tell them that, they get very angry at you. It's not, it's the rich fault. It's you guys ripped me off, and government ripped me off. But unfortunately, what Mr. Lipton was saying, it's passed down genetically. The moment I pay you, you think like an employee. That's the trap. Entrepreneurs work for free. The moment you accept the paycheck, your brain goes dead. As long as you're hungry, you'll think. You see people say, well, why don't you give the poor money? So the only problem with that is it just creates more poor people. You give a man a fish, you get a lot of people who want more fish, But you teach them to fish. Yes, don't tell people what you know. Keep them poor. Poor will always be amongst us because it starts up here. It's in their words, and the words become flesh. When they say I can't afford it or I can't do that, they go down. They become what they say. And I meet so many people, I can't afford it. You think I'm made of money? My PhD dad, he says, what do you think I am, made of money? I can't afford that. And my rich dad would say, that's why he's poor. Poor people say, I can't afford it, I can't do that, I don't have time. Because it's an escape. It's an escape. You know what I mean? It's easy to say, I can't afford it. Oh, I'm too tired. Oh, I can't go to the gym. When you could go to the gym. But no, I can't. Truth is, I'm just too lazy to go to the gym. How can I afford it? How can I do that? What would it take, or why should I do that? A question opens the mind, a statement closes the mind. See, when you say I can't afford it, your mind shuts down, and you become what you say. People say, well, money is not that important to me. Then if money is not that important to you, money is not important to you. You know what I mean? I don't care about money. The money doesn't care about you. The word does become flesh. Oh, I'll never be rich. Or the favorite one is the rich are greedy. It's the poor that are greedy. If you think about it, because to be rich, you have to give something. I have to produce books and games, and I purchase real estate, I provide housing, provide jobs and all that. That's why I'm rich. But greedy people produce nothing. Oh, no, it's the rich that are greedy. And I'm going, hey, sports fans, you point a finger forward, 3 are pointing backwards. And so, as we know, there's a big attitude problem against the rich today. We all have fear. To be truthful, we all have fear. It's just how you deal with it. Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge, but knowledge empowers imagination. And what most people lack is real business knowledge, like accounting, like debt, like taxes. You got to know that stuff, but they don't teach it in school to anybody. You know, people who are afraid of making mistakes like they teach in school, they don't ever grow. Because spirituality is there's good and there's bad, there's right and there's wrong, there's up and there's down. Most people only want to be right, they only want to be positive. Well, you can't have that. That's not reality. Every time I failed, it was like, good. I said, okay, what have I learned? And the average person, the reason they're poor is they haven't failed. You know, they play it so safe. They haven't made any mistakes like they taught in school. That means they don't learn anything. That's why the school system's actually fundamentally corrupt. It's anti-education. And I think what most people do is they let their parents or their friends talk them out of life. So afraid of failing. But failing is how we succeed. Our schools punish you for making mistakes. And that's why we have so many people who are so afraid of admitting they make mistakes or afraid of failing.
Failure should inspire you to get smarter. And unfortunately, our school system says if you fail, you're stupid. That is not true. You know, we learn from our mistakes. Mistakes are opportunities to get smarter, be humble, and take a look at something.
And that's the problem with most people today as they leave school. Most of them haven't really learned much because I don't remember my third year of calculus. I have no idea what I learned there. But I did learn that I failed. And when I failed, I was going to be, this is in the 60s, I was going to get sent straight to Vietnam. So failure was a very painful subject. I also failed English twice in high school. And today I'm known as a writer. But so failure is the key to success, except in school.
You have to understand tax. You see, this is all over the world, very little difference. These guys pay 40% of their money in taxes. So they make $1,000, they're going to spend $400 in taxes. These guys that make $1,000, they're going to pay 60% in tax. So our schools are teaching entrepreneurship, but they're not teaching them tax. Okay? And because they're focusing on income. Over here, it's 20% in tax. So they make $1,000, only $200 goes to tax, and these guys, 0%. So the reason financial education isn't working in our school systems is they're teaching financial education for these people and these people, but to really become rich, you have to focus on this side here. And that's the difference between Rich Dad and the financial and what they're teaching in school right now. I'd rather be on this side. This side is a lot harder, but in the long run, it's more fun for me. On this side here, it's harder, but you're paying tax constantly. So these guys here are saying tax to rich. Well, these guys don't pay taxes. And as strange as that may seem, and I'm talking about legal, this is all over the world. In Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I wrote about Ray Kroc, founder of McDonald's. And he was teaching at the University of Texas, the MBA program. And Ray asked, and most of the MBAs are going to come out here. So Ray Kroc asked him, he says, what business is McDonald's in? And everybody yelled and said, no, we know you're in hamburgers. And Ray says, no, we're not, McDonald's is not hamburgers. McDonald's is in the business of real estate, over here. So what you have McDonald's here, and the money McDonald's makes buys the real estate. And that is my formula. This is Rich Dad. I own real estate. I don't hang out here. I'm glad you guys are here, right? And we do our best to make sure you're educated and you have your own businesses and things like this here. But really the formula I follow personally is McDonald's. We have an education company that buys real estate, which means we make a lot of money, pay zero taxes, legally. In school, they compensate for risk by telling you to memorize the right answer. So in other words, these kids leave, the young people like you, leave school thinking, oh, if I know the right answers, then there's no risk. And it drives old guys like me crazy. Because everybody's talking about millennials. What's wrong with them? You know, millennials are the most highly, in many ways, the most highly educated generation in history. They have the cell phone. They didn't get educated in school. They got educated on social media, on the cell phones. They know all the answers, but they're afraid of doing anything.
Yeah.
You know, the biggest complaint about my generation is millennials know all the answers, but they can't do anything. And the reason they can't do anything is because you might hurt somebody's feelings, you might make a mistake, you know, and that just keeps you guys just trapped in this little box here.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I think millennial money is such an important point here, because if you're going to come into my world, old guy's world, or the information age, you've really got to understand what is risky and what is not risky. And in my world, if you play it safe, that makes you stupid. Because if you don't take risks, you don't get smarter. Number one schools do is they punish you for making mistakes. Are people punished for making mistakes?
No, it's encouraged. We want you to.
And then as long as you learn from them.
Yep, fail hard, fail fast, learn and move on.
What happens if you made a mistake and you didn't tell everybody? See, the worst thing that happens in an organization like this is when you make a mistake, you cover it up. Mm-hmm. That's the worst thing. Yeah. But that's what they teach you in school. I think the biggest secret of my success is I have all, you know, we all have these. We all have some degree of physical things we do. Emotionally, I'm a basket case a lot of the time, you know. I get upset, I get angry, I get sad, I get my feelings hurt. And I'm always, this is good, this is bad, this is, you know, you watch politics, it's all good and bad, it's a bunch of BS. But what keeps me going is this, and it's spiritual.
Yeah.
Is how can I serve others?
Hello, Robert KIYOSAKI again, and this is installment 3, and it's my sharing information about what my seminar will be about, how to raise capital, the number one skill of an entrepreneur, to be held May 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 2009, Scottsdale, Arizona. Price is $5,000. So, thank you for listening, and I will share some of the insights I've learned over the years on raising capital. again, is the most important skill I have. And just to reiterate, was in approximately 1975, I came out with this product, and we were extremely successful, but we kept running out of money. The more successful we got, the more we ran out of money. So that's when I went to my rich dad and I tried to borrow $100,000, and he chewed me out. He says, why would I invest in a dumb product when you have a bad business? And so that's when he began to teach me the next level of my entrepreneurial education. It's not about the product, it's about how to design a business that doesn't need me to keep raising the capital. In other words, how do you design a business that keeps raising money automatically? And today, the Rich Dad company is cash rich. Cash keeps pouring in because the ability to raise money constantly was designed into the business. And once again, this is the diagram. This is the BI triangle. These are the 8 pieces that make up a business. When a business is hurting, oftentimes it's because one of these 8 pieces is missing. For example, many times people have a great product, but their legal is really bad, or their communication systems are bad, or their audit, their internal order processing is bad, or the manufacturing is bad, or the marketing is bad, or they have bad cash flow management. So part of the 3-day we'll be discussing, going into depth, how you put a solid business structure together. Because this is it. There's trillions, well not trillions, but billions of dollars out there looking for a home. But they don't invest in products, and that was my Rich Dad's lesson. Sophisticated investors invest in a well-designed business. So with that, I'll go into a little more on what we'll be covering on our 3-day. And some of you who are familiar with my work understand this. When you look at a financial statement, let's say this is income, expense, asset, liability. And as I explained in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, your house is not an asset. So basically most people have a house they think is an asset, but every month it's costing them money through a thing called a mortgage payment. That's why they're broke. So what makes a person rich, like what makes me rich, is very simply I have assets such as businesses. I have the Rich Dad business. Every month, lots of money comes in. I also have real estate. I also have stocks and bonds, and I have commodities, such as I am a partner in oil companies, and every month the cash flows into me. So this is the model of a rich person. Whether I work or not, money comes in. Okay? That's what makes me rich. Most people, all they have is mortgage payment, car payment, college loan payments and all that. That's a poor person. Right? So what makes the same thing that makes a rich person rich and what makes a well-designed business rich is that as a sophisticated investor, let's say this is a rich business. When I wrote the business plan for Rich Dad, Poor Dad, this company now, is that I had to design in assets. So one of the biggest assets Rich Dad has is we are a brand and we license our name. So all over the world, there's about 60 people who every month send me money. It was designed into the business plan. For example, with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, every month, people like in Japan and China and Asia and Europe, every month they send me money. The second thing is every time I write a book, every month money comes in. When I design my board game, every month money comes in. And what else we have? When we have seminars, more money comes in. So every month, the business of Rich Dad gets richer and richer because we're constantly setting up more assets. So what makes a person rich is the same thing that makes a business rich. So when I designed the Rich Dad company, I designed it to be a rich company. once I designed this, it was very easy to raise capital. Capital poured in because sophisticated investors, people on the B and I side of the quadrant, saw that I knew how to build a rich, stable company. So today, the Rich Dad Company has zero debt and just tons of cash flow coming in, regardless if I work or not. So I hope that makes sense to you. Is every month or every year, the Rich Dad Company is working to add more assets to the business. So in this economic downturn, money still comes in. When I designed my Velcro company, I designed a wallet and it was sold. Once it was sold, there was no more income coming in. It was a poorly designed business. That's why my Rich Dad didn't want to invest in my wallet company. But the Rich Dad Company, because the Rich Dad Company is building assets all the time, it gets to be richer, richer, and richer. So, in final statement, in final, I'd like to point out, finally, I'd like to point out one more thing that makes a company rich or poor, is business design. The reason it's hard for most people to raise capital, I don't care if it's real estate or what, is very simply because most people operate here. There is no asset. The only asset is the entrepreneur who's working hard. Like if I owned a pizza shop, I have to be there 24/7 or responsible for it. There's no sense investing in it. There's no sense investing in it. The other thing too, if you have a service business, like remember Arthur Andersen was a huge accounting firm. The moment they had ran into a problem with the Enron scandal, the whole business folded. The reason Arthur Andersen went down was because they were a service building business. They were a big business, but they had tons of accountants working for them. And so the problem with a business like Arthur Andersen is their assets went home every night. They had no real assets. So once again, people go home. The Rich Dad Company gets stronger because we really do have assets. People can come and go, but the business has assets and the thing keeps running. The final thing is this. It's the same thing. Ken McElroy, the ABCs of real estate, my partner in real estate deals, his business is exactly the same. So the key to raising money, this is Ken McElroy's company, it's called MC Companies. Ken McElroy's business is in the business of acquiring assets. That's why his company gets richer and richer and richer. Every year he adds probably 1,000 new apartment units to his inventory. So Ken's company gets richer and richer because MC Core Company is designed to increase assets. Poorly designed businesses never have any assets, they have huge liabilities. I trust that makes sense to you. So Ken McElroy's business gets stronger and stronger and stronger because every year he's increasing more assets. The Rich Dad Company gets stronger and stronger and stronger because every year we add more assets. This year we're adding franchising to our mix. We're also, Rich Brother, Rich Sister, the book has come out. We come out with the real book of real estate, et cetera, et cetera. And every one of those products every year continues to send money into our product. So that's an idea of a well-designed business. If you have a well-designed business, I don't care if it's for real estate or making cash flow board games, if it's well-designed, investors will give money to you because this is a well-designed business. So that's what I'm talking. So this is installment 3 on how to raise capital. It gives you an idea of what makes us different. Again, thank you for listening so far. Even if you do not come, I trust you've learned something by listening to what makes certain businesses stronger than others, why certain businesses are weaker than others. And so, again, the price is $5,000, but there are discounts for people who have attended our seminars before, or people who sign up early, and especially you insiders, because you are best guys that we have, and so we'll give you a better discount off this price. The most important thing is if you're going to be an entrepreneur, please come to this course because it is the most important skill of an entrepreneur is how to raise capital. Generally, I never repeat any one of these 3 days. I'm not saying that I won't ever, but generally we don't. So if you're not available on this, you miss out on this one. So, I trust you've learned something from this, and look forward to installment 4, which is coming in a few days. Thank you. The most obsolete idea is go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, get out of debt, and invest for the long term in the stock market. See, why would you save money when they're printing trillions of dollars? The gap between the 1% and 99% is massive. You see, it's not just money. You have to step back and look at the bigger picture.
So what do you do?
In every one of us is a poor person. There's still a poor person inside me. There's also a middle class person. And the middle class person wants security. They want that steady paycheck. There's a rich person. And they're all inside of us except that it's not taught. If you're taught to go to school, get a job, and get a paycheck. You're not taught to how to get rich. If you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, my rich dad refused to pay me. He said the paycheck was one of the most damaging things you can take in your life. He says the moment you take a paycheck, you're an employee. And that's the mindset. So my rich dad never paid me. It drove my poor dad, government employee, nuts. You gotta pay people, you gotta pay people. And Rich Dad was not saying that the paycheck was bad. He says he didn't want to be a slave to money. So as an entrepreneur, if Rich Dad folded, I just started another company. I don't need a paycheck. I don't need anybody to take care of me. If my government doesn't like me, I move to another country because they need entrepreneurs there. So the entrepreneur is not so much the business. The entrepreneur is really the mindset and the skill sets and the different set of rules. You see, I don't operate, small business does not operate in the same rules as big business. Entrepreneur is a mindset first, a skill set, and rules. And depending upon whether you're an employee or a small business, the rules are different. The mindsets are different. The skill sets are different.
Do the rich people cringe and say, don't tell them that much?
Yes. Don't tell people what you know. Keep them poor. My father was the head of education. PhD, all that stuff. I go home and ask him, so why don't we learn about money in school? And he looked at me and said, because the government doesn't let us teach that subject. The government tells us what we can teach and what we can't teach. And I thought that was strange. And I said, but aren't we going to school to learn about money? He says, no, your job is to get a job. I said, but you get a job to earn money. He goes, no, you're supposed to just get a job. I went, no. Isn't the purpose of a job to earn money? He goes, you're correct. I said, so why don't I just learn about money? I can skip the job part, And he got flustered and he said, well, learn about money. Why don't you ask your best friend's father about money? And I said, why? That's Mike. So I asked him. He said, because Mike's father is an entrepreneur. And I said, what are you? He said, I'm an employee, I'm a government employee. I went, oh, what's the difference? He says the difference is an entrepreneur must know about money, or they're no longer entrepreneurs. And he says an employee doesn't have to know anything about money. He said the government will take care of them, the company will take care of them. So I'm all confused. But I took my dad's advice and I trundled over to Mike's father's office and knocked on his door and I said, hey, I'm here, 9 years old. Teach me about money. He says, beat it, kid, But that's where the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad started. And finally, through persistence, my rich dad started teaching me about money on one condition. And that condition was he would never pay me. He says, the moment I pay you, you think like an employee. He says, that's the trap. Entrepreneurs work for free. And now I'm 9 years old, my head's going cracking in half. He says, you never want a paycheck. Understand that, kid. I said, okay, I got it. And he said, well, how do I make money? He says, that's what entrepreneurs figure out. It's like, so how do I learn about money? So he would just break out a Monopoly game board. So I would work for free and pick up cigarette butts and get hotels and restaurants, and I would clean and do menial tasks. And as I got older, I started getting into office work, and marketing, and accounting. I was an apprentice, basically, but I always worked for free. And he would teach me about money. The way he taught me about money was playing Monopoly. And finally one day I got upset. I said, well, when are you going to teach me about money? He says, what do you think we're doing? We're playing Monopoly. He goes, no. What do you think we're doing? We're playing Monopoly. He says, what do you think we're doing? I don't know. I'm teaching about money. And then that's when, you have one greenhouse. He says, there's many formulas for great success in money. There's thousands of them. But one of the best ones found on the game of Monopoly. It still is today. 4 greenhouses, 1 red hotel. I said, what? He says, one of the greatest ways to acquire great wealth is playing Monopoly in real life. 4 greenhouses, 1 red hotel. But is that all there is? He goes, that's it. And he says, what do you think I'm doing? And I went, I don't know. So then he took me out and he showed me his greenhouses. And 10 years later, when I was 19, I was now in school in New York, and I come back to Hawaii, and Rich Dad had bought the biggest piece of land smack dab in the middle of Waikiki Beach. And when you go to Waikiki Beach today, you'll see the Hyatt Regency Hotel. That was his hotel.
Just like the game of Monopoly.
Just like the game of Monopoly.
Acquired assets and they became bigger assets.
He just kept what's called an assemblage, because that property wasn't that big at that time, so he had to buy out all the small guys. Because Waikiki was a little dirt water, little town. So he'd buy out this shop owner and buy that shop owner. And it took him a while, but he finally assembled this large piece of property. And then he and Hyatt put up this giant hotel. And it just sold for $800 million. So that's how I learned about money.
The reason I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad was because I knew this time was coming. And we have, as a world, have never been here before. And so is it a spooky time? Damn yeah, it is. It is probably the most dangerous time ever. There's nothing to compare it to, because there's never been a world economy before. For example, 100 years ago, if there was a stock market crash in England, it didn't affect anybody. But now the U.S. market goes down, the world goes down. So plus with social media and all this we're doing now, so we've never been here before. And I'm excited about it because I make more money in crashes than I do when they go up. So, but for the average person, they'll get wiped out. I'm afraid that the worst, I hope I'm wrong, but I think we're heading for a global depression.
How does this play out for the average worker, Robert, for the small business owner? What does the next 3 months look like? Because it doesn't look pretty. I mean, people are already being laid off, made redundant. There's no cash flow in most of these businesses. How does that play out?
Well, let me give one more stat just to give you the size of it, okay? The national debt for World War II was $25 billion. Every day today, they're printing $125 billion. Every single day, that's like 5 World War IIs per day. They're printing so much money to keep this, think of a hot air balloon with a tear in it. And they're doing desperately trying to fix this tear, but no matter how hard they try, the tear has gone beyond, it's coming down. So in financial terms, it's called our debt to GDP has now gone from 60 to 90 to 105, it's going to 120. We're bankrupt. And they're going to print more and more money, which means savers are losers, just as I predicted. Your money is going to be worthless in a few years. So, my message is the same as some of your other guests. This is metamorphosis time. Financial education, in Rich Dad's terms, is really financial transformation. And the definition of metamorphosis is very important. Metamorphosis, the definition is the evolution or the transformation from an immature form to an adult form. An immature form to an adult form. Metamorphosis is the same as a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. And Fuller always said there's nothing to predict a butterfly inside a caterpillar. So everybody listening right now, if you're struggling financially, just think of yourself as a little caterpillar. And this crisis is your cocoon. The question is, what do you emerge as? Do you emerge as a victim? You know, the world did that to me, and the capitalists are crook, the rich are bastards, and all this stuff? Or do you say, oh, this is the best thing that ever happened to me? The same as my health. I am ground zero for the coronavirus. All that does is inspire me to get healthier. You're either going to get healthier and wealthier, or you're going to go bust. Your choice. It sits between your ears, your heart, your body, your mind, your spirit, your attitude. This could be the best thing that ever happened to you. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. If you turn out to a butterfly, or somebody will step on you like a little worm. It's your choice.
Say one thing to somebody who's never been an entrepreneur and they're thinking about making the leap of faith into becoming an entrepreneur, what could you tell them?
Well, I'll just tell them the same thing that happened to me. You know, my last paycheck, I still remember it clearly. It was one of the worst and the best days of my life. And I was in Puerto Rico. I was working for Xerox. And my boss gave me my last, it wasn't a paycheck, it was a bonus check. I think it was about $30,000 taxable, so no problem with that. So I got this check and I went, holy man. You know what I mean? So I was excited, but I was also disturbed. And so this other guy comes up to me, his name was John. And John says to me, he says, you're going to be back. I said, why? He says, because you're going to fail. I looked at him and said, look, a few expletive words. Because that's what he did. He left Xerox, failed, and he came back. And I said, look, you failed and you came back, but I'm going to fail and I'm never coming back. And that's the attitude. Do you know what I mean? If you say, well, if I fail, I'll go back to mommy and daddy, then that's what you'll do. So if you fail, that's when I became an entrepreneur, because I had no money. I had no money for years. You know, I didn't have a paycheck. But that's what my rich dad encouraged me to do. He says, when you don't have this paycheck, you get hungrier, smarter, and it's a test of your character. Will you become a crook? Will you become dishonest? Will you cheat and steal? Or will you become a better human being? So really, that's the benefit of becoming an entrepreneur, is you really find out who you are when you don't have anything. So you always have to look at the big picture. Too many people look at, well, what's going to happen to me? When you look at the big picture, you're also going to know that when something bad happens, something good's going to happen. But you got to prepare for whatever is coming. If you think next 20 years will be like the last 20 years, you have to think. You know, when you and I go to the supermarket and we buy a carton of milk, we always check for the expiration date. But most people do not check for the expiration date on their brains. Instead of get out of debt, I get into debt. I just refinanced $300 million in debt. I went from 5% to 2.5% interest. I made a fortune. Every month, more money comes in because my cost of money has gone down. So while some financial experts are saying get out of debt, I'm saying learn how to use debt. See, when I came back from Vietnam in January 73, the first thing my rich dad said to me was go to school to learn how to invest in real estate. It wasn't real estate, it was how to use debt and taxes. Debt and taxes make the rich richer. Debt and taxes make the poor, the middle class, poor. So all the rich guys who are doctors or lawyers or, you know, those guys, they're getting creamed. They don't know why.
Doctors are getting creamed.
Oh yeah, they're making more money, but the take home is less. Sure. You know, my doctor just yelled at me. He was happy. He says, "Oh, this month I finally made $1 million." And I said, "Yeah, because this was 3 weeks ago." And so I said, "Yeah, well, how much you pay in tax?" He says, $750,000 in taxes. So his net was about $400,000. That's not bad. But when I make $1 million, I keep $1 million. working for money. See, if you work for money, you're taxed. So that's why lesson number one in Rich Dad Poor Dad is the rich don't work for money. What we do instead is we create businesses as entrepreneurs. We acquire real estate. I don't want to invest in the stock market. So the reason is because as entrepreneurs, I have more control over my income, how much I make, and how much I pay in taxes. And because I'm an entrepreneur as well as an investor in real estate, I pay zero tax. So every time I make, let's say, $1 million as an entrepreneur, I immediately invested in real estate. I have a 4-to-1 step up. So I put $1 million in real estate, I get $4 million in the bank. That's why I love banks. But the banks are screwing everybody else. I'm terrible. I was going to say.
That's why you say when you print,
Because when you print, savers get creamed and people who work for it. When they print, debtors get rich. You see, debt and taxes make the rich richer. And debt and taxes make the poor middle class poorer. When we have obsolete ideas, we get obsolete results. So what's happening for most people, the idea of going to school, getting a job, working hard, saving money, getting out of debt, buying your house because it's an asset, investing for the long term, is obsolete. The world has changed. The world changed in 1971 when President Nixon took us off the gold standard and money became debt.
what if we get rid of school? Then what would happen? Would it be better if we had no educational system at all?
No, I'm saying education is more important than before. It's just obsolete. You know, there's Moore's Law which states information doubles every 18 months. In other words, everything's obsolete 18 months. So this is a recent phenomenon. So when you come out of school, you're already obsolete. And that's why I'm the old guy, you know. I meet my friends who went to Harvard. I went to Harvard. I said, yeah, that was how long, 50 years ago? Today, the banks are charging you interest to save money. In other words, banks don't want your money because they printed too much of it. And that's why there's this bubbles in stocks and bubbles in real estate and all this. People are dumping the cash. Because as I said in here, savers are losers and cash is trash. And yet people, well, I want a high-paying job. Well, that's an obsolete idea. Get out of debt is an obsolete idea. You should learn how to get into debt, how to use debt to get rich. And they'll never teach you about taxes. The reason the 1% is way up here and the 99% is like this way is because when you print money, two things happen, inflation and taxes. They crush it. And any entrepreneur thinks, I'm just going to make money and I'm going to start a business and make a lot of money because we talk about, they really have got to smell the roses. You know, that's not what the real entrepreneurs are doing. Most entrepreneurs, there's 28 million small business owners in America. 24 million are what are one-person entrepreneurs. They're called non-employee entrepreneurs. So because that's what happens is when people don't really understand what an entrepreneur does. So most big people are self-employed, but they're not really entrepreneurs. The self-employed pay the highest taxes of all. Nobody tells them that. Yeah, it's also called the entrepreneurial spirit. But what we were actually talking about was there's no such thing as a bad economy. You know, there's external, you and I, we all have an external economy, but we also have an internal economy. And the willpower is to change our internal economy. So for me, I can see the good and I can see the bad. I don't really care because I'm going to get rich anyway. But a poor person with a poor personal economy, all they're going to see is a bad economy. Because they don't know how to make money, any economy. And a middle-class person, they have a middle-class economy. You know, they want a nice house, a steady paycheck, a job, and a car. And so you take their job away, to them it's a disaster. Well, since an entrepreneur doesn't have a job anyway, it's no big deal. So all I'm saying to people is what Bucky Fuller taught me, there's always two sides. Unity is plural, at the moment too. So if you think the economy is bad, it's because your economy is bad. If you think that steady employment is important, then you'll see an economy without jobs. Your economy versus the external economy. I can control. Yeah, it's called an internal focus versus an external focus. So the real entrepreneur has an internal focus. But if they fall down, they say, "Oh, this is good, because I'm going to go up higher." the average person will fall down and say, oh, I'm going to take some Prozac. Or somebody has a mistake, all the mistakes don't matter. Mistakes matter because you didn't know something. But a real entrepreneur, whether they fall down, they're always, they can stand back up and go higher. And no matter what happens to them, they get stronger and better and smarter and happier. But a person with a weak internal mindset is that they're so afraid of what happens, it generally happens. Like, people who are afraid of losing their jobs, generally lose their jobs. So the entrepreneur, first job is control inside here, not outside there. The moment you take that paycheck, you're an employee. You've got to be stronger than that. It's about inside control. I've had financial crashes. I've had people stab me in the back, but they're all good because I grow from it. That's spirituality. People who are afraid of making mistakes, like they teach in school, they don't ever grow. Because spirituality is there's good and there's bad, there's right and there's wrong, there's up and there's down. Most people only want to be right, they only want to be positive. Well, you can't have that. That's not reality. Well, I wasn't poor by most people's standards, but I came from a family with a poor attitude, if you know what I mean. Because rich, poor, middle class, poverty starts with a fundamental attitude. Poverty is passed on. It's taught in families. And middle class is taught in families. And so the people right now who are sitting at home, who are struggling financially or worried about money or unhappy, they may be making a lot of money, but unhappy with what they're doing, it was probably taught to you. Your super ego was taught, get a job, work hard, or you'll never be rich, or the rich are evil, or whatever. The school system will never teach you about money. The school system was designed to teach you to be an employee, which is important, or a doctor or a lawyer, a specialist, but never about money. And what most people lack is real business knowledge, like accounting, like debt, like taxes. You gotta know that stuff, but they don't teach it in school to anybody. So, and then when people ask me, how did your rich dad learn this when your poor dad, a PhD, didn't? And the answer is very simply, my rich dad was my best friend's father. His father died when he was 13. So his rich dad had this family business at 13 to run. So he had to drop out of school, which was his blessing. There's blessings, and sometimes a blessing doesn't look like a blessing, but it turned out to be a blessing. And then his teachers became his bookkeeper, his accountant, his attorney, his banker, his real estate agents. So he has what I call real teachers, not these fake teachers in school. You see, most teachers in school, they're out of ethics. They teach subjects they themselves don't practice. I asked the teacher, I said, it's under my third year of calculus now. It was called strength of materials. I said, am I ever going to use this stuff? He goes, no. I said, why do you teach it? I get paid. I said, do you ever use it? He goes, no. And that's why, you have to, in life, one of the things I suggest to people, you got to find a real teacher versus a fake teacher. And a fake teacher is somebody who doesn't do what they teach. And a real teacher is doing what they teach every day. So my accountants, my attorneys, they're in it every single day. That's how I learn, because every day I'm solving problems in my business. So I have accountants and attorneys and bankers and all these people on speed dial because I'm solving problems with my team.
I see you giving this knowledge out, and do the rich people cringe and say, don't tell them that, Rob?
Yes. Don't tell people what you know. Right. Keep them poor. But, unfortunately, the poor, as was in the Bible, I'm not real religious, the poor will always be amongst us. It starts up here.
Right, it's that fear mentality.
It's in their words, and the words become flesh. I'm not really religious. I flunked out of Sunday school also. But when they say I can't afford it or I can't do that, they become what they say. My PhD daddy says, what do you think I am, made of money? I can't afford that. And my rich dad would say, that's why he's poor. Poor people say, I can't afford it, I can't do that, I don't have time. Because it's an escape. It's an escape. You know what I mean? It's easy to say, I can't afford it.
And your rich dad used to say what instead of I can't afford it?
How can I afford it? How can I do that? You know, what would it take? Or why should I do that? He says that a question opens the mind, a statement closes the mind. So when you say, I can't afford it, the mind shuts down. It becomes what you say. Rugby is a team sport, but so is soccer. The rules are different. And other people are golfers. They play by themselves. And so everybody's different. So my game financially is business, number one. Second is real estate. So what I say to young people is, you find your game.
Well, when Rich Dad Poor Dad, I came out in 1997 and I said, your house is not an asset. And it drove people nuts. It just went crazy on me because it's a common belief. But when you can't make your house payments, you find out it's the biggest liability you got in many of the times.
It's turned out to be very much more correct than you even thought.
Right.
When you look at what's happened to home prices.
And Donald and I love real estate. I love real estate. I think it's the best thing going, better than sliced bread. But if you're not smart with it, it's like a loaded gun. You know, you can protect yourself or kill yourself with it. So real estate is, to me, the best vehicle, but you've got to be smart with it because we're using debt. And debt is a two-edged sword out there. So you use debt, I use debt, but the more debt you use, actually you have to be smarter. So you can use debt to get richer. You can also use debt to wipe you out. So that's why, you know, I continue on saying we need financial education. To just say to somebody, get out of debt, well, that's not accurate. You use debt, don't you?
Debt is a great thing, and to be big and to be very successful, debt is a very useful weapon. But you have to be very careful.
That's correct. So the other thing with when people say live below your means, you don't like to live below your means, do you?
No.
And I think when you say to somebody, live below your means, you wipe their spirit out. It's like saying somebody, if you want to lose weight, go on a starvation diet. It doesn't make you healthier to starve yourself. So I would rather get financially educated. That's why I read your books, because this is my greatest asset. I want to feed my brain so that I can expand my means without getting into excessive debt or where I start to lose. Because debt, you could say, is a two-edged sword. But telling somebody to live below your means is almost inhumane. I never felt good doing it. I wanted to strive to do better every day. I want to do better every day. I liked a good life. Like I tell the story of taxiing underneath your jet. You know, I was in my jet, but it was a little Learjet. And I look up and there's a 727, and I taxi under it. I said, holy mackerel. You know, it's big boys and their toys, but nonetheless it inspired me. I said, okay, I'm in a Learjet now, it's time to step up. And it doesn't mean the jet will make me happier. What makes me happier is the wanting to get better, to get smarter, to do better.
Well, I have a friend who was not successful at all, but was really up and coming. And he had a thing. He would only fly first class. I'm not saying do this because for somebody it won't work, but he needed that mentally.
Right.
He wanted to fly first class because mentally he wanted to think he was the best, and that's it. And even though he didn't have much money at the time, this is years ago, he would always fly. I used to criticize him, but it put him in a good state of mind, and he became a very, very successful guy.
Yes.
Very, very successful. And I've always remembered that. He would never fly coach. He would always fly first class, even though he didn't have the means to fly. So, look, it's complicated, but whatever it takes to train that.
Whatever makes you feel better about yourself, stronger, more confident, to want to do better. And I think really that's the issue. And we're at the stage of our lives right now. To ask for more is not really it, but to do better, to feel better about ourselves is still important. It is very important. So that's why I don't like saying live below your means and scrimp and all that, because shopping is fun. Nice houses are fun.
At the same time, you have to be very careful.
Yes, but you have to be responsible.
Correct.
Like, you know, when you invited us up to your little duplex up here, whatever they call it. We walked up there, and I've never seen a two-story, entire floor home in New York City. And my wife Kim says, you know, I didn't really want to live in a condo, but she says, Mr. Trump's house would do. And it is spectacular. You know what I mean? And it's.
And yet I don't need that, Robert.
Yes, I know.
I don't need that. If I had one nice bedroom with a good television set and a nice
Right.
bed, and you don't really need that. But it was in a building I built,
Right.
and it was there for the taking, so I figured I might as well do it. And what have I done? Instead of selling the equivalent of 12 or 13 units, I kept them. And by keeping them, I have them. I didn't sell them, and that's okay. And it's become, you know, a very valuable place. So I didn't need that. I don't need it now, but there's something nice about it.
Right. And that's my message: is achieve it, and then you can take it or leave it. But if you don't achieve it, then it's always something away from you. So again, that's why I'd be redundant about this, living below your means. I don't think that makes your spirit happy. It kills your spirit. Also, if you don't have the financial education, when somebody says your house is an asset, or these mutual funds are good, or the stock will go up, and you don't know the difference between a good investment and a bad investment, because real estate can be a bad investment, stocks can be a bad investment. If you don't know good investment advice from bad investment advice, then you're going to get taken. This world is not kind, should we say.
The hardest thing that I've witnessed over the last year is seeing people that were very hardworking and very conservative that invested in the stocks. And I'm not talking about high-flying stocks. I'm talking about very solid companies. And their net worth is 50% of what it was a year ago, and they haven't done anything wrong.
Right.
Now, they put their money in stocks, so I guess you could say that's wrong, but it's really not wrong.
No.
Because historically, that's been okay. So they went into conservative stocks, and a year later, they're worth 50%, and all they've done is worked. And that's the hardest thing I've seen.
That's a tragedy. The thing that I want to say is this: you can invest in gold and lose money. You can invest in real estate and lose money. You can lose stocks and lose money. You can invest in oil and lose money. You can also make a lot of money in all those things. So really the reason we get together is because your financial intelligence, your financial IQ makes something valuable or not valuable. Like I said, you have to know a good investment from a bad investment, good advice from bad advice.
You know, when I was in business school, the most horrible subject of all was accounting. You know, I was sound asleep in accounting course. And on top of that, I argued with the accounting teacher because the accounting teacher had no idea what accounting was. The guy was an idiot. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad is more appropriate today because if you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, this is all it's about. It's about a financial statement. Income statement, balance sheet, statement of cash flow. How could it not be relevant when 99% of all people graduating from school don't even know what a financial statement is? And if they do, they probably had the same accounting teacher I had, Mr. Boring, who wasn't really an accountant. He had a master's in accountancy, but he had never been an accountant. So that's why I created the cash flow board game, because accounting is the most important subject for individuals, because this is what your banker wants to see. Your banker wants to see your financial statement. This is your report card when you leave school. If you have good financial statement, bankers will give you all the money you want. See, bankers have never asked me for my grades or my college I went through. I want to say this: you have this, they give you all the money you want. Point out really, really quickly the differences between what they're teaching in school and what we at Rich Dad teach. So this is the very big difference. Like I said, most school teachers are like my poor dad, and this was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. What you're seeing here is a financial statement. You know, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a book on accounting, the most boring subject on planet Earth. But book number 2 of Rich Dad was this one here. And this was called the cash flow quadrant, right? You have E, S, B, and I. So, test for you. What does E stand for?
Employee.
Good. And what do employees always say?
That they work for money.
but they want job security,
Exactly.
paycheck, and pension.
Yes.
What does S stand for?
Self-employed.
They're small business owners,
Yes.
doctors, lawyers.
They work for tips.
They work for tips now. So they're self-employed. And B stands for what?
Big business owners.
So 500 employees or more.
Yeah.
And I stands for what?
The investor.
Investor. It's more than just investor, it's insider. You see, this is like Shark Tank on the TV shows. These guys here have done this and they've done this. So this was my poor dad, this side. This was rich dad here. So the difference, that's what schools are not teaching you, is what's the difference between these people and these people. That's the big difference. And that shows up, so when I was about your age, I had to make a decision. Did I want to, I was a pilot. You know, most of my friends went to fly for the airlines, but I'd be here. Or I could be, I could have I could be in Alaska flying fishermen around the place, a pilot with a small plane and, flying around the place. Or I could own an airlines, or I could invest in airlines. And that's the difference in the mindsets and skill sets. You don't just make crossings. The education is extremely different on this side than on this side here. I know most millennials, they want a high-paying job. They want to be able to pay the rent, eat, and all this stuff. And then you dream of the big house, a nice car, and all that.
Don't expect the government to
That's
take
why 99% of Americans are broke, because their heads are on the wrong spot. So when I asked Kim if she would take an accounting course, it was just 2 days. I wanted to see if her head could get into the asset column. That was the difference, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that's our game called cash flow.
Yeah.
And so when Kim and I met, we had nothing. It took us 10 years to go from nothing to financially free.
Wow.
So she was 37 and I was 47. But that's the power of focusing on assets versus liability. Most people are so busy working for money, so busy trying to pay their bills, and so busy buying liabilities they think are assets. So my first gift to Kim was the counting game to get her head in here, and today we're financially free, and it's the whole thing. So everybody can do it. It's a matter of putting your head into the right column. And then for me, it was in '73, I took my first real estate investment course here. I'm free. I lost money, made money back, but I never got out of the asset column. There's 3 kinds of money today that you guys got to be aware of. One is God's money, and God's money is gold and silver. So this is silver, and this is gold. The reason I brought it is most people don't know what it looks like. And then there's government money, which is fiat currency, which is the dollar, the yen, the peso, the euro, the yuan. Fake. And everybody's working hard for it. It's like eating fake food or drinking fake water. That's why people are getting sick financially, because they're working for fake money. Okay. And then there's fake assets, which was another part of the fake millennial, the fake generation series. But the reason I brought this, see, the purpose of the central bank or the Fed, or all, the Japanese bank, the Bank of Japan, or the European Central Bank, they pump out fake money. The purpose of central banks like the Fed is to protect the banks, not you. They're a criminal operation as far as I'm concerned. You're going to find that most of my talks is about the Fed. So I would recommend you guys buy this stuff. Don't save money. Don't save government money, because they're corrupt as hell, as you know. Save God's money. In school, they compensate for risk by telling you to memorize the right answer. So in other words, these kids young people like you leave school thinking, oh, if I know the right answers, then there's no risk. And it drives old guys like me crazy. Because everybody's talking about millennials. What's wrong with them? Millennials are the most highly educated generation in history. They have the cell phone. They didn't get educated in school. They got educated on social media, on the cell phones. They know all the answers, but they're afraid of doing anything. The biggest complaint about my generation is millennials know all the answers, but they can't do anything. And the reason they can't do anything is because it might hurt somebody's feelings, you might make a mistake, and that just keeps you guys just trapped in this little box here.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I think millennial money is such an important point here. Because if you're going to come into my world, old guy's world, or the information age, you've really got to understand what is risky and what is not risky. And in my world, if you play it safe, that makes you stupid. Because if you don't take risks, you don't get smarter.
Yeah.
So you may know the answer, but you can't do anything.
Yeah.
And one of the best things I had is I went to military school, then I went to flight school. I had such great teachers, All of them could fly. So my flight instructor could fly. What a novel idea. A flight instructor can fly. But when I was in high school, most of my teachers were terrified. Mm-hmm. They're all cowards, job security. Don't make mistakes. Just memorize the right answer and you'll be safe. Mm-hmm. And that's why most school teachers aren't rich.
Yeah.
And they teach that to your generation. Like, you talk about fake, this is my book, Fake here. Mm-hmm. Fake money, fake teachers, fake assets. The reason it's fake money, fake teachers, and fake assets is because it all has to be fake. You have to have fake teachers to understand fake money. Then you have to have fake assets to buy those stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, fake assets. But without fake teachers, fake money, you can't do it. So that's why I love working with on these programs here. Because if you're going to be successful, you've got to take some risk. Most of the young people your age today, a lot of them want to become entrepreneurs. The problem with this, you have to understand tax. You see, this is all over the world, very little difference. These guys pay 40% of their money in taxes. So they make $1,000, they're going to spend $400 in taxes. These guys that make $1,000, they're going to pay 60% in tax. So our schools are teaching entrepreneurship, but they're not teaching them tax. Okay? And because they're focusing on income. Over here, it's 20% in tax. So they make $1,000, only $200 goes to tax, and these guys, 0%. So the reason financial education isn't working in our school systems is they're teaching financial education for these people and these people, but to really become rich, you have to focus on this side here. And that's the difference between a rich dad and the financial and what they're teaching in school right now. I'd rather be on this side. This side is a lot harder, but in the long run, it's more fun for me. On this side here, it's harder, but you're paying tax constantly. So these guys here are saying tax to rich. Well, these guys don't pay taxes. And as strange as that may seem, and I'm talking about legal, this is all over the world. So that's the big difference here. One last thing, which I think most millennials understand, is, in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I wrote about Ray Kroc, founder of McDonald's. And he was teaching at the University of Texas, the MBA program. And Ray asked, and most of the MBAs are going to come out here. So Ray Kroc asked him, he says, what business is McDonald's in? And everybody yelled and said, no, we know you're in hamburgers. And Ray says, no, we're not, McDonald's is not hamburgers. McDonald's is in the business of real estate over here. So you have McDonald's here, and the money McDonald's makes buys the real estate. And that is my formula. This is Rich Dad, I own real estate. I don't hang out here. I'm glad you guys are here, right? And we do our best to make sure you're educated and you have your own businesses and things like this here. But really the formula I follow personally is McDonald's. We have an education company that buys real estate, which means we make a lot of money, pay zero taxes, legally. What does school teach you about money? Nothing. Balancing a checkbook, give me a break. Give me a break. So the other part, when you look at this financial statement up here, that's what your banker wants to see. Your banker doesn't care about your grades. The banker doesn't care what school you went to. I meet so many people say, oh, my banker won't give me any money. This is what, because you don't have one of these. And when you look at most of the politicians today, they don't have one of these either.
The US government doesn't have one of these anymore. They stopped doing this because the US government, the budget is so out of balance, they can't do anything. So that's why, 22 years ago, in 1996, I created the cash flow board game. The purpose of this so people could teach people what our school systems will never teach you. Never. Because they don't know it. Because evidence is now coming out that the school system was hijacked by the ultra-rich years and years ago to never teach people what I know, what my rich dad taught me. So that's why most of our political leaders are broke. They're poor people. Who makes the most? The politicians. They got paychecks for life, they get benefits for life, and all this stuff, but they're doing a horrible job. So you're going to depend upon the government to take care of you. That's crazy. A lot of people don't like Trump. I understand why. But he really understands this stuff. I know, because he's my friend. We wrote 2 books together. This is how the rich think. Even if you hate Trump, and Trump doesn't pay taxes. That's why he doesn't want to show you his tax returns. I mean, you gotta be crazy. So they'll never teach you this in school. And there's a reason for it, to keep you working harder and harder and harder. So we created this board game here. As you play it 100 times, your brain will change. Because you're doing something. The game is changing all the time in front of you. It's not invest for the long term in the stock market. I hope it works for you, but markets crash every 10 years. So I like this game a lot better. This is the real game of life here. So the point here is this.